Okay, and it looks like we are ready to go here. Okay, back to the Electronics Engineering Technology Fundamentals course, and we're still discussing the first topic, which is safety when working with electronic circuit and devices. And even though the course covers 5 parts, we're still discussing part 1. And today we are dealing with lecture number 3, important OSHA rules, regulations, and standards. OSHA stands for Organization for Safety and Health Administration. And so let's get into today's lecture. The objective is to identify and apply relevant OSHA safety guidelines in the electrical electronics lab. All right, that's our objective. Let's take a look to the safety guidelines provided by OSHA. And remember, OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. It is the branch of the U.S. government in charge of enforcing worker safety. There's a lot to say about OSHA, but the idea here is to provide an overview of some of the typical rules that apply to electrical works, and specifically when working in educational and training laboratory facilities. So 10 rules, and this is not redundant. It's slightly different than what we studied in the first part. We're going to read them real quick, but then we're going to stop and discuss them a little bit. Number 1, do not horseplay. Number 2, always get approval of the lab assistant, instructor, or supervisor. Number 3, any injury has to be reported immediately. Number 4, always follow lockout, tagout procedures. Number 5, always use the correct tools and equipment. Number 6, do not distract other students or workers in the lab or workplace. Number 7, remove all personal items before working. Number 8, use appropriate lifting techniques when lifting. Number 9, never use gloves when working with rotating equipment. And 10, follow any safety precautions not listed here. All right, let's go into the meat of each one of those. Number 1, do not horseplay. It's not a good idea to be horseplaying in the lab, in the shop, in the workplace. This could create serious problems to you, to the equipment, to the materials, to everyone around. So it's provided in the OSHA safety recommendations that no one at the workplace or lab should horseplay. All right, that's self-explanatory. Number 2, always get approval of the lab person, instructor, or supervisor in order to proceed with any works. And there's places where approvals are pretty critical, but overall, if you're working in electrical, electronics related lab, you really need to get approval from the TA, the instructor, or the supervisor, so that the person knows what you're working on, what the kind of project you're doing, and so he'll give you the okay. Either that could be verbally or in a written format. The more complex the operation in the electronic lab, the more written approvals that we will require. But in our case, essentially you need to get approval from your supervisor or instructor when you're going to be working in the lab. Number 3, any injury has to be reported immediately. That's a self-injury or something that happens to you while you operate a piece of equipment or tool, or something that you see in the vicinity of where you're working. You should report that immediately to your supervisor, your instructor, or whoever the person in charge of the lab is. Number 4, always follow lockout, tagout procedures. This is pretty critical, especially when dealing with any kind of voltage, but especially with high voltage situations. You really want to follow the lockout, tagout procedures, and that is, there's got to be a lock, there's got to be a key, there's got to be a way to safeguard the equipment or machinery that one or more persons are working on, so that no electrocution happens for the people around the environment. So it is important to follow the lockout, tagout procedures. Number 5, always use the tools and equipment correctly. That is, don't use a hammer to remove a screw, and vice versa. Don't use a screw to nail a nail. And so the idea here is use the right tool for the right job. That's the way it works, and that's the way you will successfully complete your job, and that you will do it in the most safe way. Number 6, do not distract other students or workers in the lab or workplace. In other words, when somebody's working, that person has to be concentrated. And it is not a good idea that you or somebody around distract that person. So it's recommendable that you never do that. Number 7, remove all personal items before working. Wearing jewelry or loose clothing when operating machines or equipment is not recommended. So it is advisable that you remove watches and rings and chains and things like that. And if you have long hair, you must wear a cap, a net that will protect your hair from being wrapped by a machine that is rotating. So it is important that you follow this recommendation. Number 8, always use the appropriate lifting techniques when lifting. On the right hand side, we have a fellow who is bending the back. This is not a good idea, whether that's a 20-pound, 100-pound, whatever that might be. You really need to bend your knees, get down, lift up the weight, and go with it, but not bending your back. That could create really bad problems in your back. All right? Use appropriate techniques when lifting up things or weights. Number 9, never use gloves when working on rotating equipment. That's really the way it is. Rotating equipment could easily catch either your clothes, your hair, or even gloves. So you have to be careful when you're manipulating or operating equipment that rotates. It's not a good idea to put your hands while a piece of equipment is rotated. That may grab your hands, cut your hand, hurt you, and even kill you. All right? And final, number 10, follow any safety precautions that are not listed here, and that is things that are a part of that specific lab where you're working on. And that way you will successfully complete your work without hurting yourself, damaging equipment, and so on and so forth. Let's review what we learned so far. Number 1, it is safe to wear jewelry when working around equipment. That is false. You don't want to use any personal items such as rings, watches, chains, and things like that while you're operating equipment. A few practical jokes are good for morale. That's really false, right? You don't want to be joking around, horseplaying, or things like that. It is not a good idea. When in doubt about equipment operation, you should, well, essentially follow the guidelines and recommendations of your TA. If you cut your fingers while operating a hand tool, you should actually report that to your supervisor, your instructor, or TA, whoever is in charge. If you find that the tool you're using or equipment is damaged, you should what? Report that to your TA, lab, or supervisor. And finally, follow any lab rule provided by the instructor, supervisor, or any other recommendation regarding the equipment, machinery, and the environment that you're working on. All right? That's a good review for the 3rd lecture. And once again, Oscar Rodriguez, your instructor for the Electronics Engineering Technology Fundamentals course, discussing lecture number 3, important OSHA rules and regulations and standards. I will see you next time.